Hi, I'm Ralph Preston, and William Lowe and I are back for another Roadmaps segment. In these segments, we talk about transitioning from physical therapy to a self-guided home therapy program, which most all of us have to do because our insurance runs out just about no matter where you live in the world. And tonight we're going to talk a little bit about how to get your elbows straightened out again after you've had a stroke. And William, I know when we were talking a few minutes ago, you had some of the neuroscience behind this, and that's usually what we start off with. So why don't you start off a little bit of the science behind why your elbows bent and postured?
Oh, yeah, sure thing. So first and foremost, I just want to say that I feel it's really important to address this topic of how to actually teach your brain how to straighten out your elbow in your recovery after stroke, because I've just talked to so many stroke survivors and exchanged notes with them in their recovery since I had my stroke that it just makes me so sad whenever I see someone going through their recovery. And it might be years on end or maybe a couple months down the line early on in their recovery, and they're walking around the supermarket or they're walking around the hospital, and 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 for some reason they can't seem to straighten out their affected arm, and they're walking around like this. And it's even worse because I've spoken to stroke survivors who are years down the line, and these are stroke survivors who are 3 or 4 years down the line, where their arm is stuck to their body like concrete, and and it's almost impossible for them to get back use of their actual arm because it's impossible to pry their arm actually away from their body. So I think today's topic is really important, because I think if you can understand why this actually happens from a neuroscience level, gives you a it sort of gives you an idea of how to tackle it as a stroke survivor yourself, especially when you've run out of insurance and you no longer, or you might not have that guidance which you would have received through insurance when you were receiving physical therapy. So first and foremost, the reason why in recovery after stroke, why your affected arm tends to bend up so much is because of two reasons. And the first reason is because you're probably in a stage of in your recovery where your walking isn't so good that your brain can autopilot your walking and regulate some of the signals which are coming on upstairs, which it's sending upstairs. And the reason why this happens is because in recovery after stroke, whenever your brain tries really hard to get something right or tries really hard to get something done and send those signals through like before you had your stroke, it tends to turn on more muscles than is necessary, or it tends to send more signals than is necessary to get the job done. So what happens with a lot of stroke survivors when they're bending up their arm is, if their walking isn't so good, what happens is that their brain tends to send too many signals to get their walking correct. In other words, try to clear their leg over their ground if they're walking with an AFO, that it works so hard and sends so many signals to get the walking correct that it ends on turning on everything on at once, including what's going on upstairs. And so whenever someone is walking, their arm tends to bend up at the same time as well. And until you get to a point where your brain is able to walk a lot better and your brain is able to autopilot some of the signals which is going on downstairs, then it's actually possible to actually teach your brain how to actually relax your arm so that it doesn't bend up as much as you would like it to. So that's the first reason, is because your brain tends to have a habit of wanting to turn on all of the cylinders up at once in recovery after stroke to get something done or get something perfect or correct. Now, further to that, the second reason why you might find that in your recovery after stroke, your arm tends to bend up a lot more than you would like it to, is because you've got a lot of muscle tightness which is going on upstairs. So what tends to happen in recovery after stroke is the muscles in your shoulders and your chest, they actually tend to become very tight. And these muscles are typically used to bring your arm in close to your body. And when these muscles become so tight, what tends to happen is that your brain tends to send more signals than is necessary to turn them on, and it doesn't know how to regulate these signals in such a way that it turns off these muscles and stops them from actually contracting. And this is obviously made worse with the arm sling, which actually forces your arm in a position like this all the time, which conditions your brain to get into the habit of sending more signals than is necessary to turn on the muscles which you use to bring in your arm into your body. And because your brain doesn't know how to regulate those signals, or it also doesn't know how to switch off, it also does not know how to switch off the muscles which you use to bring in your arm close to your body. And therefore, your arm stays stuck to your body and you don't know how to bring your arm away from your body. So that's the second reason. And it's also, and not only is it because of that tightness from up here, it's also because of weakness from the muscles which you use to actually bring your arm away from your body. So these muscles are basically the muscles surrounding your scapula on the back of your back, on the back of your shoulder, which you use to bring your arm away from your body like that. When these muscles become too weak, they're not able to overcome the muscles which you use to bring your arm in close to your body, and therefore you just stay stuck in a position where you're walking around the supermarket with your arm bent in close to your body. And until you can teach the muscles which you use to bring your arm in close to your body to relax, or until you can teach the muscles which you use to bring your arm away from your body to get stronger, then you're going to continue walking around in your recovery after stroke with your elbow bent up close to your body like this, which will severely limit your ability to actually get back some functional use of your hand, especially when your arm is bent in close to your body like this. So those are really the main two reasons why it's so difficult to teach your brain how to extend your elbow after you've had your stroke. And like I said, it's really important to understand the neuroscience behind it, because it also gives you a clue behind how to actually address this in your recovery after stroke, should you find yourself in a situation where you might be early on in your recovery, or it might be a couple of years since you've had your stroke and your arm is bent up close to your body and you don't know how to extend your elbow in your stroke recovery. So earlier, Ralph, you and I, we were talking about some of the things we did in our recovery after stroke to help teach the brain how to actually get into the habit of extending the elbow so that you don't have to end up like this for the rest of your recovery. I was just wondering, do you want to share some of those ideas with the folks who are watching this right now?
Sure. First thing would be, it was heavily influenced. Say I arrived on a couple days after I got to the rehab hospital. I found out about an in-house stroke group that met every Tuesday and Thursday. And I went, and there was a volunteer there who had a stroke 15 years earlier. And he had neglected his arm, and it was his right arm. And it was pinned, and it was smaller than normal. And he talked about it like, well, I didn't need that arm anyway. And that was really an eye-opener for me. It was shocking, because I was thinking, even though mine was my left and I'm right-hand dominant, left was affected, I thought, immediately, well, I'm not going to neglect my arm because I want it back. I want to be able to use it again. There's not too much you can do up here but scratch your chest. Almost everything we do with our hands is out in front of us: washing dishes, cooking, cutting things, picking things up. It all occurs with your elbow at least semi-straight. I didn't know much about neuroscience at that point. However, neuroscience is science. It's kind of logical and basic, and I followed logic. So I had this arm that was postured, not as bad as the guy, Bill, that I saw in the stroke group, but I immediately started doing passive movement, moving my shoulder, my arm away to get that elbow straight. And you can do this like You can put it on a table and just open it up as far as you can go. I got into some pain and stiffness zones, and I just kind of stopped there, and I kept working it until I had pretty good passive motion. I worked on getting some active motion back. After I got released from the rehab hospital, I went to outpatient OT 30 times in the next year, 2 times a week in the beginning. And I started spreading it out so that I could keep going back until the end of the year. I needed more. Everybody needs more in the beginning, and after a while, you're doing more and more at home, and you realize that your therapist is like your piano teacher. You go and learn and practice at home. So that's what I was doing, and she had me do a lot of things with bands, and I don't remember where I got it or who gave it to me. Maybe she did. I ended up with one of those loops with the wad of nylon on the other end that you put through the door, and it makes like a loop that can go over the door or anywhere up and down the door. They're tight enough that they don't slide, so you can put the loop and put a band through it and push and pull every which way. So I was doing things like trying to straighten my arm as much as possible and pulling down. I'd turn around and with a band behind me and pull up. I was going sideways in both directions, pulling out, pulling in, up and crosswise, every which way. I had to unfortunately stop that because I feel misdiagnosed with a frozen shoulder, and I had to stop that for a few weeks, which irritated me. But I listened to the doctors, even if I don't necessarily agree with them, because I'm not a doctor and I didn't know what was going on. I had some mostly deltoid pain, but they thought it was frozen shoulder. Anyway, so I just worked against it as best I could figure out how to do that. And another trick that I did when I was sitting around was you could put your elbow on like the edge of a couch or sofa or armchair and just let you get kind of a passive stretch. Just let gravity, the weight of your hand will tend to straighten it out. If you've got, a lot of posturing or tightness, it may not go past here. But if you keep doing that, it'll eventually, and you keep trying to move it passively and get active motion back, eventually it'll fall most of the way down. I have seen a couple of people I worked with in person get to about, out of 180 degrees, that would be straight, they get to about 170. I've seen a couple of people get kind of stuck there on the last 10%, but of course, if it's your elbow, you'd want that last 10% back. And if I'm coaching them or helping them with PT, I'd want it back too. But you can really do pretty much anything if you get to 170 degrees. There's just some kind of little thing. And it's got to do with active motion, because I could straighten them out. But then it would go back a little bit, and they couldn't with active motion do that last 10 degrees. So I just use logic and, like everything, if it wants to go this way and that's wrong, I try and make it go that way. So I opened it up and pulled on bands in every direction. And so those were things that I did in the beginning to get the range of motion back. I typically always worked on getting some passive range of motion, because I always did the stretching. I wanted to stretch. I wanted to be able to at least move it through the range of motion, because I didn't figure, and I found that I couldn't actively move something until I could, passively move it. If you're trying to passively move it and it gets stuck here and you can't open it or push it, you're not going to be able to do it with your brain, because like a lot of things, the muscles that are pulling it into you are stronger than the ones that you use to push it away, and your brain's turning on too much stuff, which makes it all come at you. So you don't have much chance of getting the strength enough to fire those muscles to open it up. So I always stretched and got passive range of motion than I would work on active. It's a lot harder to open it up, so or fight against it. So a lot of times when I started with active motion, I would actively close it back up again without playing into the whole thing, without letting it get too tight, too spastic, too much tone. So oftentimes I would learn how to start moving it back rather than opening it up, because opening it up is harder. But if you start getting it coming towards you, you can start moving it back, even if you can't move it all the way. You get some motion going in the middle, you can always build on it on both sides. So those are some of the things that I did, because I didn't want to end up like Bill with my arms smaller. It was visibly smaller as well. And if you ignore it forever, it can become a real problem. Well, not really. It didn't bother him. He didn't use it, didn't want to use it. But I mean, there was that his arm was essentially useless. I mean, he couldn't do anything with it. So that's what I did. I'm sure you've got some techniques and that you did and you can share with us as well.
Yeah, sure. I just want to say, I just want to emphasize everything that Ralph said and just really highlight and underline. I think, when you said that you were working against it, I think that's a really important idea to take to heart in recovery after stroke, because oftentimes in recovery after stroke, your brain has its own agenda of recovery, which is do everything the easy way. I think if you're going to install these habits, if you're going to teach your brain how to learn how to do some of the things in your recovery after stroke, it's going to take a lot of policing in order to get there, which basically means jumping onto any movement you have, which goes against what your brain wants to naturally do, which is bring the arm in close to your body. So I just want to highlight some of the things that Ralph mentioned with the bands over the door. These are all really good. These are all really good exercises, because what Ralph is essentially doing here is he's strengthening up some of those muscles which used to bring the arm away from the chest, so that they're strong enough to stop your arm from actually coming in and going into that bad habit of clinging close to your body whenever you walk around the supermarket or outside your house. So I think those are all. I think this is the overarching theme, which is really going to help those stroke survivors who are watching, who might be in a situation where they find that they can't extend their elbow out. It's mainly because either there's a lot of tightness going on in the chest, or the muscles that you use to bring the arm in close to your body, and the muscles which you use to bring your arm away from the body, they're not strong enough to overcome that tightness. So in terms of my techniques, my techniques and my approaches and the approach I use to actually teach the brain how to extend the elbow, mine are very different. Mine are very different to how Ralph approached his, in that I used a lot of electrical stimulation, and I also teach a lot of my clients how to use electrical stimulation to actually teach the brain how to actually extend the elbow out. And the reason why I use electrical stimulation is because the benefit of electrical stimulation is that if you have a very good understanding of anatomy, you can pinpoint the culprit muscles which are actually causing your arm to come in close to your body like this. So one of the things which I teach my clients is to simply use electrical stimulation on some of the muscles which use to bring the arm away from the body. So, for example, you would put the electrodes on the muscles which are just behind your neck here, which are on the trapezius muscle, I believe, which actually helps to assist your shoulder to actually go up like that, and also assist your arm to move away from your body a little bit as well. And also I would suggest that they also put electrodes on the back towards middle of their back, towards on top of a muscle which is called infraspinatus, which is basically the strongest muscle which is used to bring your arm away from your body at the same time. And by doing this, what you're doing is you're putting your brain into a situation where you can teach your brain to learn a flicker of movement, and you can build on that flicker of movement and help it become bigger, so much so that you can actually teach your brain to actually overcome the tightness of the muscles which are bringing your arm in close to your body, and you can voluntarily stretch out your arm or extend your elbow out away from your body, now that you're actually teaching your brain to actually move your arm away from you're teaching your brain to assume a natural position where your arm is not going to be close to your body, but rather it's going to be hanging out away from your body more than it typically is. So that's the primary approach I would take when it comes to teaching your brain how to actually extend your elbow. But on top of that, I would also combine some of the things which Ralph has suggested, but I would also complement that with a very disciplined stretch regimen, which would mainly include stretching out the muscles which are tight around the chest, which are bringing your arm in close to your body. So, for example, one stretch I like to use is a golf putter, and I like to stretch at the chest like that. So, for example, I would have a golf putter like this. I'll put my arm around here, and as you can see, what I'm doing is I'm actually pulling my arm away from my chest here. And as you're doing this at home, you should be able to feel a stretch around your inner chest or your outer chest, and also on the inside of your on the inside of your arm or your forearm as well. So what you're essentially doing here is you're stretching out your affected arm, and also some of those muscles which are so tight, which are actually bringing your arm in close to your body and stopping you from actually extending your elbow. Because at the end of the day, the reason why you can't extend your elbow is because you've got a lot of tightness upstairs, and also you've got weakness in the muscles which you use to bring your arm away from your body. So when you use electrical stimulation, what you're doing is you're getting the benefit of teaching your brain how to really dial into that signal and really strengthen that signal, so much so that you can actually voluntarily extend your elbow and move your arm away from your body. And when you combine that with the stretch and also some of the things which Ralph has mentioned, you're jumping onto any movement which your brain might have learnt from the electrical stimulation or from passive exercises which you might have done in hospital. And you're strengthening up those muscles so much so that if you want to voluntarily bring your arm away from your chest, then you're able to do so, because you've taught your brain how to really dial into those signals and learn how to regulate those signals in such a way so that your brain isn't turning on the muscles which you use to bring your arm in close to your body more than it should. So those are actually that's my primary approach to teaching your brain how to actually extend your elbow in your recovery after stroke. However, this won't work for everyone. If you're in a situation where your arm is glued to your body like concrete, I would suggest that you have a chat with your physiatrist about the possibility of maybe getting some Botox injections, because Botox injections, what they actually do is they actually allow you a clean slate to work with, in that they actually paralyze or stop the culprit muscles from turning on too much, so that you can re-educate the muscles on how to turn on and turn off properly, so much so that you know how to regulate those signals in such a way that your arm doesn't come in too close to your body and you're walking around the supermarket or walking outside your house like this all the time, but rather the Botox will allow your brain to get to a place where you can regulate those signals in such a way so that your default position won't be like this, but it'll be more where your arm is away from your body and more stretched out, so that you can actually get back more functional use of your hand later. So that's basically my approach of how I would teach how I teach my clients how to actually extend their elbow after their stroke and their recovery. And I would also combine these with some of the things which Ralph has suggested, just to really jump on those movements, as I said, and really strengthen up and really provide the brain with some strength training now that it's gotten some movement back, or now that it's actually gotten some flickers of movement back. Because once you get movement back in your recovery, it's going to be very easy to lose it unless you police your brain to really jump onto that movement and create that blueprint in your brain so it becomes permanent and it becomes second nature to not have your arm close to your body, but rather in a more open position so that you can progress a lot more in your recovery and obviously get back more functional use of your hand at the same time as well.
Okay, well, couple things. There's a phase 2 to this, and that's when you kind of get that arm moving again. It tends to want to creep back up as soon as you start walking. I think earlier when we were talking, you said when you're walking, it's not really good, that your brain tries to overcompensate and fire everything, and it fires some of the muscles in your shoulder and arm as well. I found that to be true in myself, and I also found it to be so my arm, I'd be standing there getting ready to walk, and my left arm would be fairly straight and close to what my right arm looked like at my side. And you start walking, and the next thing you know, it's creeping up again. So you have to learn how to, I guess, shut off those muscles while you're walking, or not have your brain overfire to everything while you're walking. That takes some additional brain power. I feel like I achieved it by just continuing to think about it and work on it. So I came up with like basically doing a version of power walking, so that I was moving that shoulder while I was walking, and I wasn't relying on it to droop, because when it drooped, well, first of all, you're supposed to walk in opposition. So I exaggerated it a little bit, left arm, right foot, right arm, left foot. So that's the way babies crawl. That's the way we learned how to walk the first time. So that's the way you should learn how to walk the second time. So I found that like a modified or stroke survivor power walk kind of worked well there. I've seen people or heard of people who will do something like take a half-gallon milk container and fill it partially or all the way full of water to hold that arm straight. I guess if that works for you, it works. Anything that works for you, I guess, is good. I've suggested to people that they tie a ribbon around their wrist and let the ribbon dangle down, so that when they're walking, that ribbon will tickle them and remind them, just give them a mental reminder that that arm is out there. Because I mean, we've all seen people walking around with, with one shoulder drooped and that arm doing nothing. And you need to engage it. You need to learn how to relax it while you're walking. And I've noticed that I've got 3 little steps back here. I usually come up them without a railing. I've noticed when I have things in my hands where I'm overloading my brain, no railing, things in my hands, 3 steps up, I can feel it right as I start to take that first step. And I actually recorded some videos, and a friend of mine who's fairly observant said, "Oh, look at that spasticity creeping back in that shoulder." So he could see it, and I'm aware of it. So there's kind of a phase 2 to all this, in terms of once you get it straight, keeping it straight and engaging it in a normal gait with opposition, and not just having it dangle there and forget about it, or tightening up and coming back up on you because your brain's firing out to everywhere to get your legs to work better. Hope that's clear to everybody. So William, you got any other thoughts before we close this out?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I just want to add on to what you said, Ralph, because while you were talking, it reminded me of something which I forgot to mention. Yeah, so I think there is a second phase to this. I mean, you can do all the exercises which Ralph and I suggested here, but even though once you get the movement back, it's very easy for your brain to slip up and go back to old habits of wanting to bring the arm in close to your body. So what I would suggest is once you actually get that movement, the exercises Ralph and I suggested, they're supposed to help you get the ball rolling in your recovery and start teaching your brain to break out of the habit. But a habit is only going to stay as long as you apply that to real life. So one idea I have for the folks who are watching this is once you do get that movement back and once you have gotten that ball rolling in your recovery in terms of installing that new habit or bring your arm away from your body, one thing you could do is you could actually walk around the community and you can grab a shopping bag and you could maybe put a 1 pound weight in the shopping bag and you could hold that in your affected arm. And what this actually does is the 1 pound weight or 2 pound weight, however heavy it is, it actually helps to stretch out your arm away from your body. And it will also help you improve your walking, because what happens when you walk in recovery after stroke is that your brain tends to rely on your stronger leg the most. So this shopping bag is going to act as a counterweight to help you to put more weight towards your affected leg anyway. And it's going to have the additional benefit of stretching your arm out at the same time as well. I mean, sure, people will laugh at you, and it's going to be a hassle because you're walking around with a shopping bag everywhere. But I think just reinforcing that habit of making it second nature for your brain to have the arm splayed out like that, it's going to be very beneficial for your recovery, and it will actually stop your brain from slipping up and getting back into those bad habits of allowing the arm to come in close to your body. And this is especially once you've reached that stage where you've done all your exercises, or maybe you've just gotten the Botox injection to actually stop the muscles which are used, which are overactive, and forcing your arm to come in close to your body. So I think that's actually a really good idea, should you wish to explore it, to really police your brain and continue to remind your brain that you want that arm to be outright and rather than being close to your body in your recovery after stroke. Otherwise, it's going to become very easy to forget all of that foundational work that you did in the beginning to teach your brain to come out of that pattern of having the arm close to your body. So that's basically the only thing I had to add. I don't think there's anything else at this point. I just hope that for all of you who are watching, you can really have a look at some of the things that Ralph and I shared in this roadmap, and maybe just have a go at seeing which ones work best for your situation in your recovery after stroke. Because I know for sure, having experienced what I have in my own recovery as well as in the clients who I coach, that these are all good things which are going to be beneficial no matter what stage of recovery you're in. And you are very likely to see some improvements if you just give them a try once.
Well, it sounds like the people that use the milk carton with some water in it's a similar trick to the shopping bag with the 1 pound weight. And one of the other benefits I pointed at my head a couple of times is, if you have a shopping bag or you have a milk jug with some water in it, it's sending cues to your brain to that arm is out there, and just reminds you that it's out there, and then you can remember to do whatever you're wanting to do with it. Of course, we don't want to all walk around with a shopping bag or a milk jug in our hand for the rest of our life. So at some point when you can get it straight and you can be thinking about it, then you should start trying to work on swinging it with the elbow pretty much straight. Or actually, if you power walk, you end up straightening the elbow. You can exaggerate. You don't necessarily have to. You can just do a little bit of that, but you can also go all the way out, which is like a punch, which is good. You don't want to do it too fast because you can induce spasticity, which is velocity based. So you don't want to be, you got to be careful about punching too quick, but you can get that arm going. That's, I guess, maybe stage 3. Get it away from your body, start thinking about it when you're walking, then start involving it in your walking would be the kind of the I didn't think about it in terms of 3 stages, but that's kind of the way I ended up doing it in my own recovery. So, unless you got something else, William, I guess we'll end this and see everybody next time.
Oh no, that's it. Definitely, I couldn't agree more with what you said. 100%.
All right. Well, thanks for your time, and we'll see everybody soon on the next one of these talks. We're going to continue to do them regularly. So until then,
Great, thanks, Ralph.
thank you, William.